ported cylinder head from A.L.Developments. Maud, my Mk1 Escort, broke down. Right.
Some of it in the bucket
Actually rounded off.
Oh no. That looks like it's cracked, or it's about to be cracked.
V-power into my generator.
Just thought of something.
Were a couple of bits that I forgot to buy. It got dark really quickly.
This mess.
Holes in the pistons.
Well, here it is, people.
Ported and polished by A.L.Developments.
Absolute work of art.
I realised I'd made quite a serious mistake.
This is all gonna have to come apart again.
What a mission. I'm such an idiot. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and this video is going to show me tackling the job of removing the cylinder head from Esther, my ST170 powered Mk1 Escort, to fit the ported cylinder head from A.L.Developments. Now, unfortunately, this video didn't go to plan at all in a number of different ways. First of all, Maud, my Mk1 Escort, broke down on the way to meet up with the West London Classic Ford crew to go to a breakfast meet. Luckily, it turned out to just be oil getting into number 4 cylinder from the rocker cover gasket, which is an issue I've had before. And yeah, I just didn't get around to replacing the rocker cover gasket, so that's not tragic. Another reason that day didn't go to plan is that my medium mod stopped working properly. The socket where I plug my external mic into was faulty. Broke. So loads of the clips in this video don't have any sound, which is why I've put this video together in a bit of a different way with some voiceovers. And yeah, other than that, things didn't go to plan in terms of doing the cylinder head swap job, which you're about to see. Now, it's worth noting that over the couple of days that I was doing this job, my motivation levels were up and down. I kind of felt like I couldn't be bothered to be working on my car, but because I'd left it so late to fit the cylinder head, because the car was booked in for a rolling road session, yeah, I just had to get on with it. And yeah, this cylinder head swap job is quite a big job for an amateur like me. So yeah, I wasn't enjoying the whole process, let's just say that. But anyway, let's jump straight into the video. So before I could actually remove the cylinder head from Esther's engine, I was going to need to remove so many other parts from the top of the engine before I could even get to the head bolts. But what I decided to do first was to crack off the bolt that holds the crank pulley on. To do this, I put a bar and socket onto the crank pulley bolt and then have the bar leaning against the floor, and then I'll give it a quick turnover with the starter motor, which makes the engine turn, but the bolt doesn't turn, and that loosens the bolt. Once that was done, I decided to jack the car up, disconnect the exhaust system from the exhaust manifold, and drain the coolant out of the radiator.
Some of it in the bucket. Alright, so now I can start disassembling everything from the top side of the engine bay. I'll leave the car jacked up, might make it easier on my back if I haven't got to bend down so much. This is going to take a while.
After disconnecting the battery, I decided to crack on with the water rail first, because that sometimes can be a bit tricky. And as it turned out, one of the Allen key bolts that holds the two halves of the water rail together actually rounded off.
Oh no.
Luckily though, I was able to remove the bolt. First, I put a slit in the head of the bolt with a hammer and chisel, and then I was able to use the hammer and chisel to turn the bolt anti-clockwise to crack it off, and then I was able to finish it off with an Allen key socket, because when the Allen key bolt initially rounded off, I stopped before it got too bad.
Definitely be replacing that.
I then removed the top radiator hose before completely removing the water rail itself.
Yeah, if anyone knows what brand of water rail this is, do let me know. It's very similar to a retro Ford one, but it's definitely not the same.
My new electric ratchet from the guys at APC made removing the exhaust manifold so much easier, but I did find a problem with the exhaust manifold, and it's a problem that I've had a couple of times before.
That looks like it's cracked, or it's about to be cracked.
I decided to remove the alternator belt next, so I loosened the tension on the alternator and then the belt came straight out, and then I decided to drain Esther's fuel tank.
So we'll make sure that that main wire from the alternator isn't touching anything. Wire this battery back up temporarily.
And I put all the V-power from Esther's tank into my generator. Next up, with the battery disconnected again, I decided to set about removing the throttle bodies. Firstly, I disconnected the throttle cable, and I decided to do it in such a way that it was still attached to the throttle pedal inside the car, because hooking that up and setting the tension can be a bit of a nightmare. Then I removed all 4 trumpets, and then I was able to undo the nuts that are holding the inlet manifold to the head and just pull the throttle bodies and the inlet manifold out as one.
Lovely.
Next, I turned my attention to the front of the engine to remove things like the water pump pulley, the alternator belt idler pulley, the front cover, which is also the engine mount when the engines are in the focuses.
Oh yes.
And then I was able to fully undo the crank pulley and pull that off. And then there was just one more plastic cover behind that, which is just held on with 2 little bolts.
One thing I did buy, which it looks like I don't need, is the front main seal. But yeah, no oil in there at all, so happy days. We're now getting close to the fun bit.
With the front of the engine now looking bare, it was time to get inside the rocker cover. And I also removed the spark plugs. And then before I did any more dismantling, I wanted to set the engine to TDC.
So get my ratchet on there so I can turn the engine, and it will turn really easily now. There's no spark plugs in it. There's slots in the back of the cams, and basically when the slots are like this, the bar slips in. Oh, I've just thought of something.
I realised that I was going to have to set the exhaust cam vernier pulley back to 0, because that was slightly retarded the last time we got Esther on the dyno to give her a few more horsepower. Anyway, with the exhaust vernier pulley now set to 0, I could turn the engine over by hand until the point where the timing bar was able to slip into the slots on the back of the cams, and the timing pin was able to screw into its position on the block. And this basically means that the engine is at TDC. Now, there were a couple of bits that I forgot to buy before doing this job, including a new inlet manifold gasket, but luckily my good friend Rob had one in his garage, as well as some gasket paper so that I could make a gasket for the water rail. After having a bit of a break and going down the road to get something to eat, it got dark really quickly, but with a little bit of motivation from my friend Rob, I was able to crack on with the job inside the garage, and we managed to get the cam belt removed, the cams removed, and then I was able to crack off the head bolts before I left there that evening.
That's it for today.
Hello, into a new day, and it's time to carry on
With this mess.
Once I'd removed the head bolts with a magnet, I was able to carefully lift the cylinder head off of the bottom end, and everything looked good with the head gasket and the bottom end. There was no holes in the pistons, which is always a good sign. So then I set about the boring task of cleaning the block face. I used a Stanley blade at first, and then I went round with some very light sandpaper whilst hoovering at the same time to make sure that I didn't leave any debris in where the pistons are.
Seeing as the new cylinder head is at the back of Esther's garage,
I think I'll pull her out and continue this job outside.
well, here it is, people. Esther's new cylinder head.
And this head was ported and polished by A.L.Developments.
You can see the inlet ports have been opened up to allow the fuel and air mixture to come in quicker, or more of it to come in. And around the other side, the exhaust ports have also been opened up to allow the exhaust gases out easier. Now, this head was completely stripped and cleaned. All the valves were sort of relapped back in, and this area here has been polished as well. But yeah, looks like an absolute work of art.
It's not about what it looks like. It's the fact that this should give me another 20 horsepower, I reckon, and that will make Esther over 200 horsepower.
And A.L.Developments very kindly gave me the opportunity to give away a free porting service
To one of you guys in a recent competition. I highly recommend, if you need any cylinder head work done, get in touch with A.L.Developments and let them know I sent you. They're big in the game. As I've mentioned before, there's a Fiesta that's running a 700 horsepower Z-Tech turbo lump, and there's also an Escort van that's running an 850 horsepower Z-Tech turbo lump, and they're both running A.L.Development cylinder heads. I will leave all the links in the description to A.L.Developments for any of you guys that do get in touch with them.
Over here I've got a brand new Victor Rhines head gasket and a brand new set of head bolts, and this was a kit that A.L.Developments advised me to get.
Before I could fit the ported cylinder head, I needed to transfer over the rear half of the water rail, because that's actually impossible to fit with the head in situ.
Before I put the head on, I thought I'd give you a comparison. That's the new ported head, and that's the standard one. So you can see the ports are way smaller on the standard one, and the port size on the inlets. They haven't been ported out as much, but obviously there's a lot of work that goes inside the port to smooth the flow. After giving Esther's bottom end a final hoover out, I was then able to lay on the brand new head gasket and lift on the new cylinder head. Alright, so A.L.Developments put this cardboard in here to make sure that all the buckets are in their original places. It's critical that these stay in the right order as well. Once those pieces of cardboard were out of the way, I was able to drop in the new head bolts, and luckily the head gasket came with a bit of paper that told me the correct torque and sequence for the head bolts. Once the head was torqued down, or so I thought, it was time to refit the camshafts, making sure that I kept the cam caps, I think they're called, in the same order they were in when I removed them. I gradually tightened the cam caps bit by bit and torqued them down to 10 Newton meters first and then 19 Newton meters. And then I realised that there was a metal plate that I'd forgotten to transfer over from the old head, and that actually goes behind the cam pulleys. So I removed the cam pulleys, fitted the plate, and then refitted the cam pulleys. Next to go on were the cam belt tensioner pulley and the cam belt idler pulley. And then it was just after I fitted the brand new Gates cam belt that I realised I'd made quite a serious mistake. Right, who noticed the mistake I made with the head bolts? I didn't do the final, what was it, 90 to 120 degrees. This is all going to have to come apart again. I'm going to have to get the cams out and then do the head bolts properly. What a mission. Really not motivated today either, and I'm running out of memory cards, so yeah, I'm going to dive into this off camera. I'm such an idiot. Alright, so I'm now back where I was after I realised my mistake with the head bolts. I've also thrown the spark plugs in. I've hooked this coolant pipe back up because that's a lot easier to do when the throttle bodies aren't on. And I've also put that bolt back in the block where the timing pin threads in. I think what I'm going to do now is pour some oil on the cams just so they've got something on them when I first go to start it up. Then I'll put the rocker cover back on, and then I'm going to chuck the throttle bodies back on. And then I think I'll feel like we're actually getting somewhere with this. Alright, so with the inlet manifold studs transferred over from the old head, I can now slide on the Dan ST Engineering inlet manifold gasket, which luckily for me, my good friend Rob had in stock. Just ripped there. I think that'll be alright, to be honest. One thing I didn't think of is the larger ports don't match this gasket. And again, I guess they do match the Dan ST manifold. Maybe I should have got this port matched. Well, it's going on the rolling road tomorrow, so I ain't got time to do that now before then, so that might be something I'll have to do in the future to unleash a few more horsepower. It almost looks like an engine again. Got loads of electrical bits to plug in, got to plug the HT leads into the spark plugs. I can't put the water rail on until I've fitted the exhaust manifold, which is a way getting the crack welded. But, this has definitely been more difficult than it should have been, mainly down to my own idiocy and lack of talent, but it looks like she might actually make it to the dyno tomorrow. Sitting here watching telly and I just realised I haven't done an outro for this video. As you've just seen, there's still plenty to do before I can take the car to the dyno tomorrow, but it is going on the dyno at about 5 PM, so I've still got most of the day tomorrow to get her back together, and I'm pretty confident that I will be able to. This cylinder head swap job has been a lot longer and harder than I anticipated, and yeah, my motivation levels have been up and down. At times I felt like I should just shut the garage door and come back another day, but because I left it till the last minute and she's due on the dyno tomorrow, I had no choice but to soldier through it. But it's all part of the fun. Got to send another massive thanks out to A.L.Developments for doing such an awesome job on the cylinder head. I will leave their links in the description for any of you guys that need any of that sort of work done to your engines.
So I'm going to start a new video tomorrow on Dyno Day. If you got to the end of this video, massive thanks for watching. If you thought it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Check the links in the description to my social media, my own website, my Patreon. Massive thanks, as always, to all my patrons for your continued support. And for anyone who wants to contact me, I'll leave my email address in the description as well. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.